morning. It's Tuesday, June 16th, 2015, and this is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, Yemen peace talks get underway in Geneva as Sana demands Houthi forces withdraw from Aden. An Iranian hacking blitz presents the latest skirmish on the ever-escalating cyber battlefield as the IDF here in Israel announces the formation of a new cyber command. And later on the show, Republican Jeb Bush announces his presidential bid, setting the stage for a face-off of political dynasties. Good morning, I'm Yael Wissner-Levy, and we begin today in Geneva, which is hosting the high-stakes talks to try and resolve the bloody conflict in Yemen. The UN Secretary General called yesterday for a 2-week ceasefire to be put in place ahead of the holy Muslim month of Ramadan, the 3-month conflict, which of course put the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels alongside half of the Yemen's army against military forces loyal to the exiled president, which in turn are backed by a Saudi-led coalition of Sunni states, has claimed now more than 2,500 lives. To discuss this, we are now joined in studio by I-24 News senior Middle East analyst Ali Waqid. Good morning, Ali. Thank you for joining us. And the senior intelligence analyst at the Levantine Group, Ben Decker. Ben, thank you for joining us. Let's all take a look at the next report on the latest developments, and we'll take it from there.
Ahead of the holy month of Ramadan, another attempt to reach a humanitarian ceasefire in Yemen was launched Monday, with UN-brokered peace talks starting in Geneva.
I have emphasized the importance of having this another humanitarian pause at least 2 weeks. The Ramadan begins after 2 days. Ramadan traditionally is a period where people pray for peace, reflection, and harmony, reconciliation. So people of Yemen should be able to enjoy this kind of a peace.
Representatives from Yemen's exiled government, the Houthi rebels, former President Ali Abdullah Saleh's General People Congress, and other opposition groups are expected to attend the talks, but the delegation representing the Houthis was late arriving in Geneva.
This is purely logistical issues that representatives of Houthis and other groupings were not able to arrive yesterday, and I'm expecting that they will be arriving late this afternoon or early this evening.
Yemeni Foreign Minister Riyad Yassin Abdullah, part of President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi's government, expressed willingness to discuss a limited ceasefire with the Houthis, but only if the Iran-backed militia withdrew from cities, released more than 6,000 prisoners, and complied with a UN resolution.
Ceasefire for what? If they are still occupying Yemen, if they are still killing innocent people, if they are still destroying everything, what kind of ceasefire? We give them a chance before a couple of weeks, for 6 days, and they use it to exaggerate their offense attacks against the civilians.
The Geneva talks will last between 2 to 3 days, as on Tuesday, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister for Middle East Affairs is expected to discuss the conflict at a meeting of the Pan-Islamic Organization of Islamic Cooperation, hosted by its regional rival Saudi Arabia, both backing opposing sides in the 3-month-old bloody conflict.
Ali, I do want to start with you. Just news from overnight, of course, reports coming out of Yemen that the United States has taken out the second-in-command of al-Qaeda, Nasir al-Wuhaisa.
Yes, and if the report is true, it is of course a very big achievement for the United States for the fight against Al-Qaeda in this region, because we know that Al-Qaeda is taking advantage from the fact that there is a war in Yemen, in which Al-Qaeda is not directly involved, and Al-Qaeda is using this war between the Houthis and between the Saudi-backed militia that support the President Mansour Hadi, to strengthen its position in some of the region, mainly around Hadramaut. And in this region of Hadramaut, there was this strike of the United States that for the moment, no confirmation from any Al-Qaeda actor that Nasser was really killed. Same for Mukhtar al-Mukhtar yesterday, by the way, Yael, that for the moment in the Al-Qaeda sources, there is no official confirmation that he was killed, but in my opinion, if he was killed, this will help somehow the Houthis that the United States are backing the Arab coalition that is fighting the Houthis, because the Houthis are fighting in two fronts: one against the Saudi-backed militia and the airstrikes led by the Arab coalition, and on the other hand by Al-Qaeda in Yemen, which means that this strike can give an indirect support to the Houthis. But I think that the fight against Al-Qaeda is so strong, and we are hearing that the Islamic State is trying to gain ground on behalf of Al-Qaeda in the peninsula and mainly in Yemen.
And Ben, when we do hear about the Houthis gaining at least territory, they are going straight to the Saudi border. And this is, of course, not only ominous for the Saudis themselves, but the region in general, because as we heard, the U.S. is getting involved specifically against Al-Qaeda, but also it's gaining ground against the Houthi rebels.
Yeah, the Houthis have made significant gains in the Jaffa and Sada governorates, where they historically have a significant presence. And since day one, when this whole entire intervention began, one of the main issues that the Saudis discussed was deterring the Houthi threat along the Saudi border. What we've seen in this conflict so far is at least 50 Saudi border guards have been killed, and countless civilians have been caught in cross-border artillery fire. So regardless of what happens in Geneva, the Saudi-Yemeni border is going to be a significant flashpoint for conflict moving forward.
And what is the trigger for Geneva? You did mention humanitarian concerns from the UN. What can be achieved there? Some are saying, you know, we can't even call them peace talks. We're just really calling them ceasefire talks, if anything.
Well, unfortunately, I think these talks were really doomed from the get-go. The Houthis, you know, were actually delayed in Djibouti for a day and only arrived this morning. So they've already missed their meeting with Ban Ki-moon, whose really three goals for these talks are to coordinate an immediate ceasefire, potentially for 2 weeks during Ramadan, to implement the UN Security Council resolution, which calls for the Houthis to withdraw from recently captured areas, and 3, to increase humanitarian assistance in an area which, you know, is ranked one of the worst poverty-stricken areas of the world. And, you know, there's a significant water resource limitation, and there are food limitations, and the humanitarian situation is just going to get worse. So I think that at least potential 2-week ceasefire and increased humanitarian assistance are possible. The implementation of the Security Council resolution is unlikely to happen in the near future.
Is this because the gaps between the two sides are just too wide to...
Absolutely. The Houthis are calling for these talks without preconditions, whereas for the Hadi government, they're really calling on the implementation of the Security Council resolution as the first step.
And
we should understand that it is true that in Geneva there are two Yemeni parties that are meeting, but this is a bigger game than the Yemen. It's Iran versus Saudi Arabia, and for the Saudis it is not only tactical or even a strategic file or threat, it is an existential threat. When you hear the people around the king and around the palace saying that this is a zero-sum game, we cannot make any mistake. The Saudis at the maximum will allow the team of President Hadi to accept a humanitarian ceasefire during Ramadan. For them, there is no question to stop the fight and even to enlarge it immediately after Ramadan, in case Iran will not impose a ceasefire on the Houthis, and in case Iran will not admit the fact that Yemen is part of Saudi Arabia's strategic interest and security and national security. And this is why the Saudis are in the recent days leading talks with both Jordanians and Pakistanis in order to see how these two countries can be involved in the fights, because they understand that what we are seeing in the last weeks, when the Houthis are trying to focus and then to emphasize in the borders between Saudi Arabia and between Yemen, it is not only war in Aden or in Sana'a, it is in Sada and in the borders between Saudi Arabia and Yemen. And the videos that are published when we see some Saudi soldiers running away from the region of the fights, it was very strong and very humiliating for Saudi Arabia, which has no intention to give up this time. Yemen, it's different from Syria. Yemen,
Are these, excuse me for interrupting, are these airstrikes successful in terms of the Saudi-led coalition? Because up until now, they don't seem to be. Of course, when we see video of Saudis running away from...
Absolutely, and there is a point that the Saudis do not understand, like the Egyptians in the 60s and 70s did not understand that even those who are anti-Houthis in Yemen do not appreciate the fact that there is a foreign party that is striking and bombarding Yemen and killing from both sides. In yesterday rally that was organized by the Houthis supporters, some elements, some civil society members also participating, calling for this war to stop. This is why, for the moment, we are hearing that even some tribes that are not Zaydis, that are not Shiites, are calling upon the Saudis to stop their strikes, and not only for the Ramadan month.
Ben, in your assessment, at least for now, it's hard to predict the future. The Geneva talks will be successful in what?
We might see a 5 to 14-day ceasefire. We will likely see additional humanitarian aid deliveries, potentially to Aden and Sana'a, and possibly even to Hodeidah. But beyond that, we're likely going to have this same exact conversation in the next 2 to 3 months.
Right. The UN official, senior UN official, called Yemen a ticking bomb. Is that accurate in your assessment?
Completely, 100%. If it's not the physical conflict itself that's going to kill people, it's going to be the humanitarian disaster.
And of course, the regional powers in the background. Ali Waqida, thank you for joining us. Ben Decker, thank you for joining us. And from war-torn Yemen to another kind of war, the one in cyberspace. Even though online attacks have been prevalent for several years, more and more countries are suddenly working on their online defense systems. In recent days, China-linked hackers are said to have gained access to sensitive background information by U.S. intelligence and military personnel. That's access to nearly all of the millions of U.S. security clearance holders potentially exposed to blackmail and all sorts of security risks. And it's not just superpower rivals battling it out. Just yesterday, the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, announced the establishment of a new cyber command set to be put in place in 2 years. Let's take now a look at I-24 news reporter Gabby Weininger's report detailing a cyber fight a bit closer to home, but with equally treacherous consequences.
A new way to wage war? The trenches are now being dug in cyberspace. An Israeli company, Clear Sky, says it's discovered a wave of attacks originating in the Islamic Republic of Iran, and it's targeting countries across the region. 44% of attacks are on regional rival Saudi Arabia, and some 40 incidents against their arch enemy, Israel. Hackers gather user data through false web pages, so-called targeted phishing, and researchers say the attacks have been going on for nearly 4 years, sending malware to hack into telephone lines, email accounts, and even Facebook. This latest wave is said to be the worst yet, taking over the computer or email account of unsuspecting targets. So who are these targets? Clear Sky says it's mostly academic researchers, journalists, and human rights activists involved in the fields of diplomacy, international relations, and counter-terror. The report comes just days after Israel itself was accused of infecting 3 European hotels hosting negotiations over Iran's nuclear program with the Duku virus, an espionage software believed to have been developed by Israelis.
Hypothesis that it was done by other Western countries like the Americans themselves in order to spy on the Iranians, because everyone would like to know what they speak in closed rooms.
Israel declined to comment on the involvement, but were accused in February by the United States of using leaks from the talks to distort the American position. So even the US isn't immune to such attacks. Data stolen from government computers by suspected Chinese hackers this month included security clearance information and background checks in one of the largest known attacks on federal networks.
Worldwide, the risk and frequency of such attacks is on the increase. The basic rules of international law apply in cyberspace.
While basic rules of law may apply, it's clear a new kind of warfare is being waged. And as long as sensitive information is being stored on computers, there is nowhere to hide. The new battlefield also raises concerns over online privacy, with governments claiming they need more monitoring capabilities to locate and ward off such threats. For Israel, at least, that's not such a problem. According to a study by the University of Haifa, the majority of Israel's Jewish population don't really mind if the state monitors their online activity, if it's for their own protection. 87% of those asked expect the government to respond to any security threat with a counterattack, including physical attacks on enemy targets, taking online warfare out of its virtual trenches.
We're joined now in studio by the Senior Research Fellow at the INSS and the founder of Israel's Data Protection Authority, Yoram Hakohen. Thank you for joining us, Yoram. And by the head of Clear Sky Cyber Intelligence, Eyal Sela. Good morning, Eyal. Eyal, I want to start with you. How many Israelis are susceptible to any kind of cyber attacks today? Is it all of us?
Yeah, no doubt. Any person who uses the computer connected to the internet and even not.
And what kind of attacks, if you can categorize them, is it a wide spectrum of attacks, a specific kind of attacks?
Well, actually, most attacks would be conducted by emails and malicious websites, I would say. There's obviously other types of attacks, but that's the most...
and obviously people within the Israeli society, for example, working in security establishments are probably bigger targets. But the average citizen, what can he or she do in order to protect themselves, or actually just even know that they're being attacked?
You are right. It's quite a big problem. The first thing is being vigilant. If you are targeted, you have to notice if you're receiving weird emails or files that you shouldn't have gotten. And it could help a lot to verify with the sender that they actually send it to you. That would be the case in many cases that could help prevent such an attack.
But Yoram, also in terms of the state, and then you know this well as the founder of the authority that actually instilled a lot of measures to protect citizens, you have to give up on your privacy. You have to give up on some parts of your privacy in order to be safe, and this is what we're told.
Yeah, you have to give up, and we are generally giving up our privacy, and it became kind of a habit of us. But we have to understand what are the limits of giving up our privacy. And the example of giving your privacy for security reason is a good one to look at, because let's assume we are in Israel. We generally when we enter into a mall, we let the guard to look at the bag.
Right.
Okay, so that's okay from our point of view. But if someone would take something out of the bag and look and say, "Oh, you're using Clonex, don't use it. It's not." Then you will feel very bad. So the limit where you give this license to get into your privacy is a line that you have to look at.
But what are the parameters of this line? Because it is kind of like a cat and mouse game. The more sophisticated these hackers get and these attacks get, the more sophisticated your privacy settings need to be. And of course, now we're hearing news that the IDF is opening a new cyber command to deal with many of the threats that the military is getting.
Yeah, the military is a different story. When you're in the military, then...
Which most Israelis are, or have been at one point.
And when you're a soldier and when the attack is on the army, then privacy is not a major issue. There is an issue, but it's not a major issue. But when you're talking about the general society, it's true that people or civilians are being targeted and they are being attacked, and that is why the government or the state has to take care of that. But I think that the civilians themselves has to understand, that's what Eyal was saying, that they have their own responsibility as well. And if they will let the state say, they do it for us, it will lead to very bad places, because when you let the government to control everything for you, then you find yourself there with a big brother state, and this is not what we want to go through.
Someone who was actually a victim of a cyber attack just very recently, joining us now via Skype, is Tamar Gindin, a doctor of linguistics specializing in Farsi, and you are, of course, the original victim of this Iranian cyber attack just of late. Tamar, thank you for joining us. What were the first initial signs that you saw, that you understood that you were a victim of a cyber attack?
Okay, I just want to say I wasn't the initial or main target. I'm one of 500 targets. I'm just the one who exposed it. I felt the attack 2 days after my interview in the IDF radio station about myself as an Iranist, about my books as an Iranist, and about my connections with Iranians inside Iran through social networks.
So you interviewed for Israeli radio, and in that interview, you said that you were having contacts with Iran, and that's what kind of triggered the attack?
That's what I think. That's what triggered the major attack. The major
attack. What was the major attack?
You want me to tell you the end and the beginning?
From the beginning.
I was infected 2 weeks earlier with a keylogger. That's spyware that's actually broadcasts everything I type to the bad guys. So they had all my passwords. They didn't use anything financial. I checked my PayPal. I checked my bank account. They didn't use anything financial. They only tried to get my passwords, but they really tried phishing for passwords, for example, that were saved in the browser, so I never typed them, or for my two-step authentication after that broadcast.
Yeah, this is something that you with Tamar, of course, your firm exposed. These are tactics that are known to cybersecurity firms, or were these new tactics that now you have to relearn and kind of evaluate?
Well, no doubt, these are known tactics. In this case, the most interesting thing was that they were very persistent, and they didn't give up. If they couldn't do it in one way, they would send another email. They would even call the victims, which that's quite rare, especially if you're talking about someone from another country. And we have seen that, yeah.
And Tamara is of course, not your everyday quote-unquote victim. She's a professor of Farsi. She understands that, she could... Tamara, correct me if I'm wrong, you did see kind of mistakes in the...
Persian, the Academy of Persian Language asked not to use the word Farsi for the language.
So you're a Persian expert, and you did see mistakes in Persian, mistakes in English, or English that wasn't up to par with professional standards?
It wasn't... No, Persian didn't have mistakes. Persian had slang. Persian was very original, low language, but it wasn't wrong in terms of linguistics. It was not as literary as I would expect from the BBC,
right?
Or from students. But it was native, and the English made terrible mistakes, typical of Persian speakers.
What kind of measures are you now, as a personal person, and then of course in your professional life, taking to protect yourself from future cyber attacks, if you can right now?
First of all, I'm on an internet diet. I mean, my computer, I'm not allowed to connect to any Wi-Fi for the next month.
Right.
I'm just using an internet stick for my computer, and I am usually a very cautious user. I mean, I caught all the phishing attacks, and I think so, and all the weird people all of a sudden trying to contact me and send me files or wanting to talk to me on the phone. I caught that. What I didn't catch was a malicious file that was sent to me from someone, allegedly from someone I know, and it included our previous correspondence.
Wow.
So I didn't check the email address, which was not really hers.
Which, I mean, I just throwing out a number here, I think 99% of the people wouldn't check that address. Yoam, can countries come together and battle this? Is this something that can be a transnational, international kind of effort? Or is it just, we have to trust people like Tamar?
You cannot fight cyber attacks without international cooperation, because if you leave it on the level of the state, the attacks do not come from within the state. They come from from outside, and then only a cooperation between let's call it the democratic states, the states that give values of human rights, civil rights, and they have common values of democracy, have to cooperate in order to fight. This is the only possible way, really, to tackle those challenges.
Yeah, what's the latest that you're hearing or researching on the battlefield and cyber? How far will it go? We heard, just even within correspondence with a friend, with a colleague, you have to see that it's actually that person sending you that email.
No doubt, you are not safe. Especially again, if someone want to get you, we believe that the average person would get breached, and even someone like Tamar, which is very technology savvy and aware, they managed to breach into her computer, and effectively, since we got in touch, we are like her cyber bodyguards. She sends us suspicious emails, files, and stuff like that, and we investigate them and analyze them.
What have you found?
So yeah, we found that the attackers continued to send malicious files, fake websites to her and to her colleagues. So. And that's when she has someone who's a specialist and helps her. So it's a good question. What should a private person do?
And you have found, specifically with Tamar's attackers, that they are Iranian. Do we know anything else about them? Is it something that you would go to a national authority, such as the Data Protection Authority and so forth?
Well, first, we share the information, and sharing the information is a very important point with many parties in Israel and abroad, as much as we can. We are a private company, so there's not too much that I can do about it. But yeah, we have many indicators that they are Iranian. Some were just discussed. Others include the infrastructure that they used and the malware that they used, and other companies that have also investigated the same similar cases and the same campaigns and have reached the same conclusions.
Yoram, in your expert opinion, the next wars will be now moved from the battlefield to the cyberspace, or is it?
There is a war already. We have to understand
just don't feel it.
Yeah, some of us do not feel it, but there is a war. Yeah, and some do. There is a war, and people have to understand it. And then, unfortunately, civilians do not have a place to go to and to complain, because if you come to the police with these ideas that you have been attacked, no one will really treat you, this threat for you. So I think that from the state level, there should be kind of an operation that civilians can address and say, look, this happened to me, what can I do? There should be kind of an information center that people can understand whether what they face is wrong or okay.
And then, of course, unfortunately, may only come after the next big attack is after us. Yoram Makon, thank you for joining us. Eyal Sela, thank you. And Tamar Gindin, thank you for joining us.
Say one last thing about sharing.
Yep.
I was treated personally by Clear Sky Security because I shared it on Facebook. Other colleagues of mine who were attacked either weren't vigilant enough and didn't notice it, or were too vigilant and didn't share it.
Right. That is, of course,
sharing is very important.
Quite the most important lesson, perhaps. Thank you all for joining us. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the Israeli government, who's agreeing now to advance a bill to force-feed hunger-striking Palestinian prisoners. We'll be back. And welcome back to I-24 News Morning Edition. On to our next subject now. The Israeli government is advancing a bill which will allow the force feeding of prisoners who are on hunger strike if their lives are in danger. The move, promoted by the previous government but sidelined over ethical concerns, is now gaining a measure of urgency with a group of Palestinian prisoners that are refusing to eat as protest over their being held without trial. In 2012, Khader Adnan of the Islamic Jihad militant group went on hunger strike for 66 days and only agreed to eat after Israel promised to release him. Authorities in the country now fear that if a Palestinian prisoner were to die in custody, it would trigger major unrest in the West Bank. The controversial practice, which took place for years at Guantanamo Bay, has been rejected by the Israel Medical Association, which urges its members not to carry out the brutal procedure. To figure it all out, we are now joined in studio by the former commissioner of the Israeli Prison Service, Orit Adato. Orit, thank you for joining us. And by the founder and president of the Physicians for Human Rights and psychologist, Dr. Ruchama Marton. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to start, of course, this discussion from the past. This is not the first time, Orit, that we've encountered this ethical concern. It's not going to probably be the last. This bill is going through the next Knesset. Do you believe it will pass?
I don't think there is a need for that bill. I think the current situation enable doctors to take care or to save life whenever it happens. I don't see a principal difference between an inmate or a prisoner who tried to hang himself rather than one who is striking in a hunger strike, getting to the situation of life in risk. That situation, doctors should take care, should save him, her, whenever, whatever were the reasons that it has behind it. So as to my opinion, there is no need for that kind of a bill. At the past, there was an ethics committee that took care of this situation and decided that it's the time to feed them, and they have been fed. It happens very rarely because of the fact that they knew that at the end of the day, it will happen. That's why I think at the past, it happened very rarely. After what happened 2 years ago or a year ago, it's now a tool for them, a kind of a weapon.
Right. For negotiations.
Negotiations, influence, and anything.
Joining us also now from Ramallah is a former Palestinian Minister for Prisoners' Affairs, Ashraf Al-Ajrami. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us. You hear here in the studio, Orita Dato saying that Palestinian prisoners do use this kind of as leverage against the Israeli authorities to get what they want. And while someone will argue here in Israel that this bill is towards keeping these Palestinian prisoners alive, what's your take on it?
The Palestinian prisoners used to use this kind of struggle to achieve their the improvement of their conditions in the Israeli jails, and somehow recently some of them were arrested without any being in front of the court, administrative arresting, and they also protested against this kind of arresting. So this is the way that they can struggle to change their situation by a peaceful way. So it is important for Palestinian prisoners to make this step to make their life in danger to achieve improvement in their conditions. And so it is not acceptable to change the situation of this by feeding them by force. It was very dangerous in the past when the Israeli authorities tried to feed them by force. In 1980, in Nafha jail, 3 of the Palestinian prisoners died because the milk entered their lungs, not their stomachs.
Dr. Martin, of course, this is an ethical medical issue. Besides the politics that surround it, and there's a lot of politics that is surrounding this current bill, mainly politics. The ethical concerns here is really what is the job of the doctor at the end of the day? Is it to keep people alive, as someone would say on the street, or is it to let the person decide for him or herself that he should or she should eat when she wants?
Well, I don't like the way of putting those things in the way you most probably quoted, because a doctor first thing should respect, but fully understand the word respect, what the patient wants, his free will. And if the patient wants to starve to death, this is his right, or her right, of course. And the doctor is not a god. He or she shouldn't force anyone in spite of their will. And we must remember that those people are prisoners. The only freedom they do have is their own free will. If that is taken away from them, there is nothing left. And the way of this inhuman, ugly way of forced feeding is torture. It's breaking the spirit and in many ways also the body of the prisoner.
Right. We've heard also, Olita, the Dr. Edelman, the head of the Israel Medical Association, saying that my doctors won't carry out this procedure even if the bill is passed. And we are hearing yesterday that the deputy health minister saying that it's unheard of that someone will call to defy the law. This is crossing a red line. What comes first? Is it politics and bills that are maybe instigated by politics, or ethics?
Of course, it depends on who you ask. But my answer, ethics is before everything. And laws, especially laws like this, are coming and going. Ethics is there, I hope forever. And there is no way that the doctors will be servants of politics, of government. No way.
I agree with the principal idea, of course. I think ethics is a basic that shouldn't be jeopardized. But I just want to clarify a little bit. The free will of a person is very important, but according to international laws and local laws, while you are in prison, the government, by the prison service and by the healthcare physicians, has the responsibility for your life. So it brings you to the point that if the life are at risk, you have to do something. I would say that the idea of talking so much about it brought it to the point that it became an issue. We didn't. It is an issue. Was, yeah, it has always been an issue. But the last time that they fed them by force, that was and misuse what they have to do, was 30-something years ago.
As we heard.
Since that, for decades, we kept these inmates. Not only the security inmates, not only the Palestinians, but also Israelis in different situations. No one has the need to use feeding by force. So,
but how much, as the former commissioner of the Israeli Prison Service, how much politics, or how much at least politicians' wills are you influenced by, or do you have to kind of fend off?
No, it's not politician wills. We have our way and regulations and SOPs that we have to follow up. So we are following up the regulation, either if the government is a right-wing or left-wing. And I had the opportunity during the Intifada to have a left-wing minister and then a very right-wing minister.
Were there differences in management?
They were different in there. I did the same thing because that's professional. Correction system is a professional body. You are not changing your nature by the politicians. It's a professional way to take care of them. That's how you do. With all your inmates, it doesn't matter if it's a security inmate or a criminal. It doesn't matter.
Just to be, of course, the devil's advocate and represent the other side, Mr. Al-Ajrami, of course, should a Palestinian prisoner die in an Israeli prison, that fallout will have implications not only in the West Bank and Gaza, but also, of course, here in Israel. Should that happen, would that change any kind of Palestinian prisoners' conduct, do you think? Do you think they would use it less, as you said, as part of their negotiations?
I think the prisoners' affair is very important for the Palestinian people, and it will be a problem if any prisoner will die in the Israel jail. But the responsibility of the Israeli authorities is to save their lives, not by feeding them by force, but by taking other measures. Maybe if anyone will be in a dangerous situation, they can put them in the hospital and maybe feeding him by infusia and other instruments, not by feeding them by force, because it is a violation of their rights and it is some kind of torture against these Palestinian prisoners.
I might surprise you by saying that from the legal point of view, if I was the Israeli government, I would check very carefully the administrative custody of these people and find out who should be staying in prison and who can be released. When you are balancing it, it differs the situation, and maybe there will be less threats of hunger strikes.
In other words, I fully agree. Instead of fighting them, just try to listen to them, because what do they want? They want
a trial.
A trial. They want better jail conditions. They want the possibility to learn. All the things they want are negotiable, and many of them are really justified good things. But instead of killing them, you know, in the 80s, 5 people died by forced feeding. 5 people in the prison.
It has been done in the wrong way. That was
There is no right way. There is no right way to force feeding. It's torture.
But there is a right way to save life.
There is a right way to save life by listening, not by forcing them. No, I do not.
Should the bill, though, pass, and this is a little speculatory, but should the bill pass and the doctors will have to face this ethical dilemma of invasive treatment, as you call it, or
torture, I call it.
Or torture, or abiding by the new law, what will happen in terms of doctors? Will it be up to the individual doctor's choice, or do you suspect there will be a higher, bigger conflict between doctors' associations and the government?
I would like to believe, in other words, I would like to see it, that it will be a general decision of the IMA and, of course, the Physicians for Human Rights, who were pushing this decision all the way long, because one can always find an individual doctor that will do it.
Right.
All strikes were broken by strikes breakers, which are kind of very specific people, which I don't appreciate at all.
Right.
No, I mean...
You have an oath to save life. Anyway.
No, but this is not...
saving life.
It's not saving life. It's torturing. It's forcing people to give up their own will. To save life, give them some of the things that they do wish to have.
Why do you take care of a person who tried to hang himself? He wanted to die. But nevertheless, when he brought to you as a doctor, you have to do the best you can do to save him, isn't it?
Yes.
What's the difference?
It's not that simple. If I have the chance to talk to this person and to be convinced that he or she really...
If he hanged himself, I suppose he did.
Well, but after talking...
So you leave it in a doubt.
No doubt. After talking, one can more or less find out.
But first of all,
if the person...
to be able to talk with him, and then you won't let him
No, if he's hanged, I cannot save him.
No, but if he swallowed pills, you clean his stomach first of all before you talk to him. That's the same situation in principle.
It's not the same situation whatsoever, because this is a fight. People are fighting.
That's politics. That's politics, not saving life. And a doctor should be a doctor, not a politician.
But
as to my opinion,
but the government are trying to involve doctors in the politics by this forced feeding, which not only it's torture, but it's breaking their fight for a little freedom,
we have
for
to,
a little respect.
It's a fascinating discussion here. That would obviously,
everything is politics.
Everything is politics, one will say. And then at the end, of course, this bill is just in its first stages. It hasn't, of course, passed, and we'll definitely be speaking about this in the future.
There will be no need for it.
I agree. Thank you for joining us, Olita Dato and Elchama Martin. Next up, we're going to talk about Jeb Bush, who has declared his White House run. We'll be back. Welcome back. It's still Tuesday, June 16th, 2015. This is still the morning edition on I-24 News. Thank you for staying with us. We're going over to the United States, where the former Florida Governor Jeb Bush became the 11th Republican politician to announce his bid for the Republican Party ticket yesterday. He's, of course, the brother and son of former presidents, and he made his announcement at a college in Florida before going on the road, visiting, of course, the sexy states of New Hampshire, Iowa, and South Carolina. Bush's announcement sets the stage, of course, for a battle of political dynasties, because if he does get the GOP nod, he will likely face off against the Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton, and then it'll be Clinton versus Bush once again. Ruti Sinai, you're here to explain. It's the battle of the royals.
It is. It's it's the Americans don't have a queen, so this is as close as it gets.
All right, and Ami Kaufman, you're also here. You've collected a few headlines from around the world, and especially in the Jewish press.
Yeah, but we're going to check those later, right?
We will check those later. I want to take a look first at the next report about the latest coming out of the U.S. race of the presidential elections, and then we'll take it from there, of course.
I will run with heart.
In English and Espanol, Governor Jeb Bush now officially in the race.
And I will run to win.
His mother Barbara watching in the front row, but no Bush 41 today and no Bush 43. No accident. The new candidate's message, he's his own man.
Not one of us deserves the job by right of resume, party, seniority, family, or family narrative. It's nobody's turn. It's everybody's test.
You won't even find the Bush name on his campaign logo, just Jeb. Who is he? A doer, not a talker, he says. The former Florida governor taking a subtle jab at the many U.S. senators he's now competing against.
There's no passing off responsibility when you're a governor. No blending into the legislative crowd.
And his concrete promise, 19 million new jobs and a commitment to the middle class.
You think America's ready for a third Bush?
I think America is ready for a good candidate, and I think America is ready for a good president.
Governor Bush also went after Hillary Clinton, saying as Secretary of State, she was part of a phone-it-in foreign policy that has left a legacy of crisis all over the world. Tom Yamas, ABC News, Miami.
We're also joined now from Washington by the Times of Israel diplomatic correspondent Rebecca Sterl-Shimoni. Good morning, Rebecca. Good night for you. This was, of course, expected by Jeb Bush, but the Republican race just got a little bit more feistier, if I can use that word.
Well, absolutely. Yes, it was expected, and yes, this is heating up the race. And the most interesting thing about this, of course, is that Jeb Bush is, compared to the current field right now, a little bit different. He's not beloved of conservatives. He doesn't come with a huge conservative or right of conservative base. Instead, he's coming as the candidate who is most likely to be able to draw in the great American independent, the center that isn't really aligned with either party particularly.
Ruti, and in his announcement yesterday, he said he was very clear, bashing the current administration, saying America doesn't need another liberal, and he's going to be that extreme opposite. He has a lot of opponents within the Republican Party that can take that ticket just as much. I mean, they're conservatives more of him.
Yeah. Well, look, I disagree a bit with Rebecca in the sense that his father coined this term of compassionate conservatism, and I think he does pride himself on his conservative views and legacy. Small government. These are things that he implemented during his two terms as Florida governor. Both the question of small government, tax cuts, and now he's talking about less involvement of government in Washington. But as you said, there are people to the right of him. What he claims, repeatedly, is that he's the most experienced, which is perhaps almost true, and that he brings all sorts of sort of as polyglot. He speaks Spanish. He is a Bush, but he isn't a Bush. By the way, what are they going to call him? Like, there is President Bush Sr., then there's Junior, and then there's what?
J. Bush.
J. Bush. Maybe Bush, Busher, and Bushist.
There you go. There. But speaking about that name, it can do wonders if you're on one side of the political spectrum, and it also can harm him.
Yeah,
people will label him immediately by his father and brother's doing.
Right. That's one of, he's been trying to, on the one hand, distance himself and saying I'm my own man. On the other hand, he is obviously trading on the name. So I think his message is a bit unclear. He's also talking about, doing away with all those spoiled people in Washington, but he himself obviously has led a life of privilege and is very well connected in Washington. So it's a bit unclear. He's also talking against immigration reform, giving citizenship to millions of undocumented aliens. On the other hand, he's got this Mexican-born wife, and he does
speaks Spanish fluently.
Yeah, and and he talks about he talks about a big tent, and this performance yesterday, his coming out was a big tent event. He had a Spanish singing backdrop, and he had the mother of a disabled boy and an African American priest or preacher or something to blessing the crowd. So
all the props were in place.
The props, absolutely.
All the colors, the right colors.
The right colors, exactly.
Rebecca, of course, there is baggage that goes with the Bush name, but in terms of polls, he's not exactly leading in terms of the other Republican frontrunners, and in terms of, as Ruti said, he does have a Mexican wife, he speaks Spanish, but he's not the only. We have Rubio, of course, and others that also have other different ethnic backgrounds that can only help them as a Republican candidate.
Yes, and first of all, to solve the great question, of course, he's going to be, if he gets elected, Bush 45 will be his nickname. We're counting up by odd numbers when it comes to the Bush president.
There you go.
But yes, certainly he does have a certain amount of, on one hand, he has a certain amount of baggage, which despite his protestations that he's a small government guy, he brings with him. And on the other hand, yes, he is kind of lacking in some of the cachet or the panache of some of his other Republican contenders. But then again, it is a very broad field. With 11 people running, you're going to get a little bit of everything. And so, yes, he's probably lacking in some things. Yes, he also has in other things. I would say that immigration, for instance, is an issue in which he, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, have very interesting distinctions among him. And one of the things that happened today or yesterday when he made his campaign announcement is that he hadn't planned on mentioning immigration because it's been a kind of touchy issue for him. And it is an issue that he seeks to differentiate himself from the other Republican contenders. And what ended up happening yesterday is he was heckled, and he ended up, yes, addressing immigration, and he ended up promising that the next president would pass, quote, meaningful immigration reform. But he did say that that would not be through executive order. So he's trying to draw these very fine nuances, which you have to do when there's 11 people running. Right. But on the other hand, fine nuances aren't necessarily what wins you a primary or an election.
Ruti?
Do we know anything about his war chest compared to the others?
Well, he's starting his campaign. Right now, he's got a whole bunch of things being booked. I know he's starting some really serious fundraising. I believe that he's doing fairly well. And again, he brings with it kind of a cachet and also a good machinery for building his war chest.
Actually, to be a bit more exact on that, his super PAC was supposed to raise $100 million by the end of this month. It's not doing as well as people thought. Jeb Bush is actually right now considered a frontrunner, but he's being tagged as a very weak frontrunner. He's not doing well in the polls as the people thought he would. Right. And he's not doing well, especially what is even more important, is what's called the invisible primaries. Everybody hears about the caucuses and straw polls, but the invisible primaries are what are endorsements from other politicians, from governors, from senators, from congressmen. At this stage in their campaigns, his father and his brother were doing much, much better. They had much more endorsements.
Well, they didn't have this 11 list of
They didn't have the 11 list. The field is much larger, but still at this point he was doing. He was doing. They were doing a lot better than he is, and that's why he's considered right now a weak frontrunner.
And Ami, you have some tweets.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there are some reactions that I think everyone wants to see what Hillary has to say about this. So we brought a little video about what Hillary had to say about Jeb voting.
We haven't got that yet.
We haven't got that yet. Okay.
But I do want to hear what Hillary has to say.
Well, she was actually. It was more about how she did. She said, "Is she afraid of Bush?" And I'm tempted to answer that, but I won't. So it was a good. It was a good little. Anyway, everybody's talking about the logo. I mean, did you see the logo with the exclamation?
Yeah, it looks like a Broadway musical.
Yeah, it looks like a. Yeah. Well, here, let's see some of the reactions on the web. One of them bring up the first tweet. That's the okay. There you go. They put the head of George Bush under the exclamation point. Some people says it looks like a flop musical that closes out of town, or kind of like Gets Your Laundry Whiter Than White. Or or Jeb Bush, the Yahoo exclamation of GOP candidates.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go. Those
Get
are some
your
of those
laundry
tweets.
whiter than white, indeed.
Someone did another one with Bernie Sanders, and instead of Jeb, he wrote Jew for Bernie Sanders. I thought that was a bit of maybe over the top a little. There it is. There's the one for Bernie Sanders. And on Vox, this next headline from Vox is a bit over the top, because a few days ago, just before he announced, he did some reshuffling in his campaign, and he appointed a man named Danny Diaz as his campaign manager. And in the New York Times, they wrote, one of his aides to Mr. Bush said, by hiring Mr. Diaz, Mr. Bush wanted to send a clear signal that the culture of the Bush operation will now be a Pickett's charge engagement campaign with his main opponents. Now, people said, okay, what is a Pickett's charge? Now, Pickett's charge is a reference to an element of the Battle of Gettysburg, and it's actually one of the worst moves that the Confederates made. It brought the death of about 6,000 people. Okay. It was a total massacre, and that's the wrong thing to call something like that.
To say the least.
Hillary Clinton has now put up a Spotify list for, Spotify is a music app.
Right.
Okay, and people can listen to their soundtracks on Spotify, and she has her own Spotify list for people.
Just describe it, because we don't have it, so what is on her Spotify?
Well, there are songs from Kelly Clarkson, Katy Perry, and Ariana Grande. Apparently, of the 14 songs, none of them were released before 1999. So these are all like teeny bopper songs, and she's, I guess, trying to cater to a different
don't worry. Each song was picked very carefully and made sure that there's no kind of messaging inside and so forth.
Right.
Well, Hillary Clinton and her music choices definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to go back to other headlines in the world.
Other headlines from the world, regular little press review. We're going to start with the BBC. Wow, talk about a last-minute escape from South Africa. Omar al-Bashir from Sudan is wanted. There's a warrant out for him from the ICC, the International Criminals Court, for war crimes during where he killed and militiamen killed about 300,000 people in Darfur. There was a warrant out for him, and the South African court told him not to leave the state until they decide on him on this issue. He said, I'm not listening to you. He got on his plane and left. He arrived in Khartoum last night, and just a few hours after he landed, they issued the warrant to arrest him. So they just missed him by a few hours.
Well, he had assurances in advance he wouldn't be arrested. He wouldn't have come otherwise.
I've heard those as well. Those comments as well.
He said so, or one of his aides.
Yeah. And he hasn't really left the country until now because of these
Well,
arrests.
he's left, but only to go to countries where he knows they're not signatories of the International Criminal Court.
Yeah, people are saying that he has protection from a lot of African countries. He really doesn't worry about where he's going to go.
Well, the Africans are not terribly enamored of the ICC.
They say that the ICC is pretty much looking out for people in those African countries. Off to Saudi Arabia and the Daily Star. 2 people were beheaded yesterday in different places in Saudi Arabia, which brings the number so far to 100. 100 people so far in Saudi Arabia. It's not as high as last year, where 87 were executed, beheaded in 2014. It's not, and the record, by the way, was 192 in 1995. One of them was a Syrian drug trafficker who was arrested for bringing amphetamines in, and another one was a guy who murdered someone else, a Saudi national.
It's amazing because these kinds of headlines you don't really see anymore in Western media, because Saudi Arabia is now very, very close with the current administration, of course, in Yemen.
Part of various coalitions and
exactly.
Stuff like that. The MERS outbreak, the death toll in South Korea has risen to 16 after another 50-year-old male died yesterday. So far, 150 people have been diagnosed with the disease, and 17 of them are said to be in very unstable condition. And the World Health Organization is going to hold emergency talks later this week, calling the outbreak very large and very complex. So this is not getting any better.
Right.
On the good side, good news, a little slice of good news. There were thousands of schools across South Korea that were closed because of this, and tens of thousands of children that were not going to school. So they're going to be opened up, except for another 440 schools that are going to stay closed. That's a lot of kids that have to find a way to. And sticking with Korea, a North Korean soldier, just walked over the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, which is probably one of the most fortified borders in the world. He just walked over. He's 17 or something like that, and nothing happened. There was no violence. Just walked over. No shots heard.
Did he say what he wanted?
He said that he was being beaten, and he left because of poor living conditions in his homeland. And
they took him in there.
They took him in. It all ended pretty well. He's the first soldier that did that since 2012.
He's a soldier?
He's a soldier. He's the first soldier that did it. There are hundreds that do it, citizens that do it either through the sea or through underground or whatever they find. But this is the first soldier since 2012.
And it's interesting that it's a low-level soldier, and that that's how things start. Quickly, one last one.
Well, just the Greece and EU talks collapsed yesterday, and everybody started pointing fingers on who to blame. So now they have 2 weeks left to find out who is going to pay how Greece is going to repay 1.6 million euros in debt mostly to the International Monetary Fund, and it doesn't look good. And personally, I have a vacation in Greece pretty soon. I hope this happens before I go.
For sure.
We'll just tell the Prime Minister Tsipras there to get everything, get his act together for Almi Kaufman and family.
I mean, it's important.
Indeed. Right. Thank you for joining us. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the Stanley Cup and, of course, some more headlines from the web. But first, let's hear some more of this morning's headlines. Welcome back to I-24 News Morning Edition. We now say hello and good morning once again to Ami Kaufman, who is here today for the Spiral Viral. That is the web review.
Good morning, Yelhaya.
Good morning.
Have you ever bumped into anything while you're, texting, using your phone and holding it? Always, really?
Always.
It hasn't happened to me. I've seen people.
Into everything.
You really?
I've walked into a lamppost, not
in public.
Joking.
Oh,
yeah,
were you injured?
I tripped over air.
Yeah, tripped over air.
Well, you might want to consider taking a trip to Antwerp in Belgium, where they will now have, as we can see in this BBC item, some text walking lanes.
No
lanes
way.
that are specifically made on the sidewalk for walking with your phone and not bumping into. Well, I don't know how it's going to work, because if everybody there is texting, everybody will be bumping into each other, right?
I think it's pretty genius.
You think so? Because
I'll tell you why. Because in Tel Aviv, there's biking lanes which no one really.
Nobody uses. Nobody
uses, and
they put trash cans in the middle and.
Trash cans or there's this ongoing war between cyclists and pedestrians in Tel Aviv, and just having a text walking lane will kind of
Yeah, it'll make things a little smoother for the other pedestrians.
And then you can have a bike lane and pedestrians.
Yeah,
regular pedestrians without smartphones.
By the way, the BBC has this amazing figure here. They say that there are now 7.5 billion mobiles in the world. That's more than the population of the world. We're standing on 7.2 million. So
people with multiple smartphones.
Yeah, multiple. Yeah. Or they're just sitting on the floor, mobiles that are, I don't know. Anyway, so this item from a site called Flashback has gone totally viral. Everybody laughs sometimes about fashion from the 70s, but these guys put ads of fashion from the 70s. You can see these guys, what they're wearing, and it's just crazy. I can't believe that people actually wore this stuff.
Yeah.
These are real ads from the 1970s. Look at that one.
Ooh.
It's like Bonds.
Low rise.
Look at that with the yellow pants and the hat. People actually dressed like that in the 1970s.
Oh, that pink suit.
And look at the woman there with looking
I didn't
adoringly.
see her.
She's looking at him adoringly.
This is Get Your Christmas Buys with the the fringes are coming back. Some of this stuff, I have to say, Ami, we're laughing, but some of the stuff
is back in fashion now.
Yeah,
No, it is.
I cannot
see me wearing those white slacks.
How about those Bonds? Wow.
Not going to happen. Not
nice,
gonna happen.
But those are really nice pictures.
Okay, on to our next one from BuzzFeed. There's a new challenge.
Yeah.
I don't know why they always have these, it's Ice Bucket Challenge. Okay, this one is called the Belly Button Challenge. It started in China on the Chinese Twitter called Weibo.
Okay.
And what you have to do is, in this challenge, is you take your arm and you put it around your back, and if you touch your belly button, you are a slim person considered. And if not, then you have to lose some weight. There's a video here that I have from Instagram that demonstrates how it's done. Let's see how it's done.
Okay.
Yeah, the music is kind of porno, 70s porno. I don't know what it is.
I'm trying.
Uh-oh.
Can someone else try with me so that I don't look like the old...
Look, I tried last night when and I almost broke my back.
No, I'm not even near my belly button.
Oh, she's getting there. That was close.
People are going to start posting this on Facebook like crazy, like the Ice Bucket Challenge?
It's going to be, right now it's all over Twitter. I'm sure it'll be on Facebook pretty soon. And,
God.
Yeah, everybody's going to start doing it. Because everybody has to do it, right? Yeah.
Can't believe it came out of China. Yeah. Wow.
I'm glad Mira was with me on this one because this is sports related.
Okay.
There's a guy in China. His name is Haukur Alfredsson. You know how we have to watch the NBA finals here pretty late and everybody gets kind of tired because of the hour, 4 a.m. So he had the same thing.
Is this the internet meme?
It is. It's an inherent meme. Now, he fell asleep at work on his couch at work later, and everybody made a meme of him sleeping on his couch, and we can see some of the pictures of it that his coworkers made from him sleeping on the couch. They get pretty ridiculous.
Okay. There you go.
There you go with the final supper, breakdancing. Let's see what else they got here. Oh, here's a North Korean leader looking at him outside the plane.
Oh.
Botticelli. Shooting out of a cannon.
Nice. Even though the timing in Iceland is better than, I mean, it's like about 2 hours ahead of us.
Yeah, but even so, I mean, if tonight's NBA game is starting at 4 a.m. our time, it would even be 2 a.m. for Iceland, so that's pretty much going to be me tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah.
So we'll make a meme of you. We'll see you going to sleep here on
Go for it. The next internet sensation.
Would love to have a meme of you doing the belly button thing also while you're waiting for the while you're waiting for the NBA games to start.
And we're just going to finish off with Jurassic World, the movie that opened up over the weekend. It broke a record of all time, the biggest opening weekend of all time, over $500,000.
Really?
That is the biggest one of all time.
And this is not only children's, because obviously it wouldn't break that kind of record. This is
This is from the series, the Jurassic World series. It's produced by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
And it's a huge hit.
But you have to say that it still didn't break any Avengers or Harry Potter records, which is still.
I don't think so yet, but for the first weekend, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
She ate it. I mean, everybody loves Chris Pratt. That's a lot of.
That's a lot of.
I think that has a lot of what to do with it. The kind of actors in it.
Yeah, definitely.
Who would think that Dinosaur is going to break the box office in 2015? Stay tuned.
I will.
We're gonna go hear some sports news from Mirav. What are you starting with?
Well, we're starting with the Stanley Cup. Blackhawks, I want to say 3 or 4 hours ago when we first arrived at work, officially won their 3rd title in 6 seasons.
Wow.
Which is an absolute dynasty when you think about it. They've on and off for 6 years have been winning the Stanley Cup title. But this is the first time in 77 years that they've done it at home. And the past 2 times that they've won in the last 6 years, they've done it on other people's, which is, I think, more impressive to win it on somebody else's home ice. But this is the first time they've actually got to win it and celebrate with their fans on home ice, and not have to wait till they return to the Windy City. It's an absolute incredible story for them. And one of their players is actually 40 years old. He was planning on retiring, one of the defensemen. So this is a great way for him to go out after saying he's going to retire, to go out with the Stanley Cup on home ice. Absolutely incredible story for them. They won 2-0 in Game 6. Obviously not needing to take it. Would have been exciting to take it to the last game, which we're hoping we may see in the NBA Finals. It's coming up. Yeah. The two have a lot of competitions. If you talk to Americans over what's more exciting, the Stanley Cup final or the NBA Finals.
The Stanley Cup is such a niche population. It's pretty.
It's a niche population, but their fans are so ecstatic that they will always go out and argue that hockey is better than basketball. And it's a huge, it's intense fight that I've seen over the past couple of years, because they go on at the same time and they try to have it on different nights so they don't coincide.
Right.
But the fighting between the two sides of which game and which finals is more intense and more exciting is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't know which one I would pick, because hockey just does have this certain thing that no other sport has. Personally,
I think the guy
see
in Iceland is staying up at night watching the Stanley Cup.
I don't know. Iceland's got those countries.
Well, maybe Iceland specifically, but I mean,
inside the U.S., the NBA has much larger viewership, doesn't it?
It has a much larger viewership.
And it's worth much more.
It's worth much more. But hockey fans are so intense. I don't know if you've ever sat down with a hockey fan. They are so intense about their game that they will go out and they will argue all the time about the fact that they think that the Stanley Cup Finals are much bigger than the NBA
Well, you know
Finals.
where hockey really wins for me, and the Stanley Cup. The Stanley Cup itself is a real trophy.
It is
that thing is huge.
It passes around. I mean, I don't know how they raise it. You're playing already how many minutes of game time, and you have to raise that thing over your head.
So Blackhawks is completely off the charts in terms of other teams. It's the 3rd win, you said?
It's the 3rd in 6 years. So, Commissioner Gary Bettman already came out and said, I think you've earned yourself a dynasty, being able to call yourself a dynasty. But going from one finals to another, Game 6 of the NBA Finals is tonight. Golden State has a chance to win it on their home court. LeBron, if it's up to him, don't be too quick. We do have a short report about that, so let's take a look.
Let's take a look.
Put up a 3. That's good. No signs of his Game 4 fatigue. King James leaving it all on the floor. LeBron James from way downtown. But still not enough to hold off aggressive plays from the home team, like this posterizing dunk from Harrison Barnes. Off the glass, Barnes on the follow.
What do you say to the best player on the planet after you dunk on him? You said you were talking too much. What were you saying? Tell me, man.
Nothing I can say on TV.
The Warriors are 1 win away from their first NBA title in 40 years. The hometown crowd going wild, and the Warriors taking one step closer to destiny.
I hope at the end of the day, on Tuesday, we can hold that trophy and be proud of that.
But the King, with a friendly reminder, don't count him and the Cavs out yet.
I feel confident because I'm the best player in the world.
Say, Marav, so not to count out the Cavs yet? What would you say?
I wouldn't count out the Cavs yet. I'm a true Kyrie Irving fan. I know he's not playing, he's injured, but I'm still waiting. I'm hoping he gets his first ring. And I do believe before I said that it's going to be at Golden State tonight. I take that back. It's actually going to be in Cleveland. I'm getting confused with my home ice and my home court. But that game is going to be in Cleveland. Like LeBron came out and said, I'm the best player. He's saying, don't count us out yet. But a lot of the media is already going out and saying, this is Golden State's, because Cleveland will have to win at home today, and Game 7 have to win in Golden State, which is a really tough feat to do.
And a lot of commentators have been talking about how they've been playing throughout, that saying that any victory that they did have was kind of like
it was really hard fought.
Game. It
was
absolutely
hard. It was hard fought. Every victory that Cleveland did have, and a lot of them were saying, Matthew Dellavedova just came out and shocked everyone. He's a player that you didn't really know and didn't really see. And once Golden State got used to him, all of a sudden he's not as effective. I mean, you don't have Kyrie Irving on the court, and you don't have Kevin Love on the court. J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert aren't playing up to their potential.
Yeah.
It's all on LeBron. And he's coming out and he scored more than 40 points again in Game 5. So he's doing what he has to do, but he doesn't have the supporting characters that he needs in order to clinch this title. Even though he's come out and saying, I'm the best player in the world. I'm still going to do this.
Which is not doing really good for him media-wise. There's some media that's getting a little fed up with LeBron James.
A little fed up with it, but a lot of people are also completely buying into it. Look at this man with the confidence that he has. He's coming out and saying, I'm the best player in the world. A lot of conversation is also already going to, with the media saying that Golden State basically won it already. Can LeBron win the Finals MVP? Without winning the finals and winning the title? That hasn't been done since 1969. Wow. So the conversation is whether or not this will actually happen. Will LeBron be able to do it? Are we going to see history more than 4 decades later? So that's where everybody's kind of already pulling away from the games and focusing on that. So LeBron maybe is trying to push them and say, don't count us out just yet. Don't start talking about this type of history I'm making when I could be winning the title. So he's kind of trying to push everybody back into perspective.
Speaking about pulling out of the games and then taking it to our corner of the world, the Israeli media is completely obsessed, not with LeBron, not with the Cavs, not with the NBAs, but with David Blatt.
Yeah, every time you get one of those alerts from one of the Israeli websites, it's not Cleveland won or Cleveland lost. It's David Blatt won and David Blatt lost.
Which LeBron had something to say about too.
Yeah, it's
criticized his coach a bit.
Absolutely. So it's the big difference between the media. If you take a look at it from the Americans' perspective, it's all about what LeBron or Dellavedova, not so much about what David Blatt has done. Even though I do have to say, if they do pull it out, win the next 2 games, what David Blatt has done is winning the EuroLeague one year and the NBA the next year is
never been done,
absolutely amazing.
But Israelis will take it to their own victory. It's we won. It's not David Blatt. It's not the Cavs. It's Israel has won.
And moving on, FIFA just doesn't know how to keep quiet for more than a day at a time, it seems.
They should start.
A lot of reports coming out over the past couple days about whether or not Sepp Blatter will actually step down. One of his campaigns for re-election, one of people behind his campaign came out and said, well, there's nobody else who can actually take his place, so maybe he won't step down in the end. And FIFA's come out and said, hold on a second. Why are you making these claims? He's announced he's stepping down. You, as of the end of May, are no longer involved in this. You cannot make these claims. And there's all these rumors floating around about whether he will stand for re-election. They were saying possibly mid-December is when that will be. They will be convening in July to decide on that specific date. So there's a whole lot of speculation of where do you go from here? Sepp Blatter may have announced he's resigning, but who knows? Can he actually survive this and somehow either get re-elected or decide I'm not stepping down? FIFA's saying no. He's coming out and saying it's not going to happen. But there's so much speculation around it.
But the credibility of the organization to keep, being the world's governing body in football.
Hot seat. Not only Sepp Blatter in the hot seat, they're in the hot seat. Now we're coming up with bids for the next World Cups and for any other games that they have. They have to really show the world that they're not involved in this corruption, that they're changing their ways, and I don't believe they can do that with Sepp Blatter at the helm. But now they're trying to clear their name, saying, wait a second, he is stepping down. He announced it. It's not going to happen. Nobody's taking back anything. This is the way it's going to stay.
For sure when they all meet in July.
In July, absolutely. And they'll make that decision about when they will elect the new president.
All right, let's end this very informative sports segment today with some dancing.
Some dancing, yes. The New England Patriots, after winning the Super Bowl this year, received their Super Bowl rings, and they had a party to follow with it. And it's some of the funniest dancing I've ever seen. Okay. Tom Brady.
Oh, there you go. Talk about a star.
Look at that, Tom Brady. That's Rob Gronkowski.
Where's Giselle?
You stole my question.
Sorry.
See, Ami and I are on the same page here.
Yes.
Thank you.
We look for the sports news, like the juicy news of the sport.
With all due respect to Tom Brady,
everybody, I'm enjoying watching him try to dance. Yeah. Try to dance is the key word. Trying.
But I see how they're all fisting up their hands.
I mean, he's got the 4 rings.
Yeah, it's hard.
So
it's hard with all that bling.
Gotta show those off.
So much bling. Where is Giselle?
Where is she?
We need a video of Giselle.
That's another
dancing. Yeah. Merab Seville, thank you for joining us. Ami, thank you, of course, for being here. That's all for today. You can find us on Facebook and on Twitter. Watch us all the time on our website, i24news.tv. We will be here tomorrow. That's it from here from the Jaffa Port.